Thank you so much for joining this webinar on human resource analytics. This is brought to you by CHRMP. CHRMP stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional. CHRMP is a premier HR certification uh, in partnership with Pearson VUE, and this certification can be taken in 190 countries across 5,600 test centers. With this, let me introduce myself. My name is Animesh Rai. I head the training and the certification vertical for CHRMP in India. And I come up with about 14 years of experience in human resource consulting, in learning and development, and in analytics. I would be the chief facilitator for the webinar today. And post, as I said, the webinar is done, I would be taking all the questions for you to get a very clear idea of what it takes to be a good HR analyst. Now with this, let me start with the topic of today. Topic of today is HR analytics impact on business. And before we start, I would want to do a very, very small, quick activity with everybody. I would want to understand that if we are hiring, you are the hiring manager, and if we are hiring sales executives for a company, let's say an insurance firm, whom would you hire? Would you hire an extrovert or you would hire an introvert? Right. Wonderful. Great. Great. That's wonderful. Right. So almost everybody agrees that it's important to hire an extrovert for sales executive. We immediately made up our mind, and this is exactly what we shouldn't do when it comes to analytics, right? There can be a lot of cases, there can be a lot of situations where maybe talking more is not a way of selling, maybe listening more is a way of selling. There are possibilities. There might be customers which are high end and which would want to explain the problem, want somebody to listen to them rather than somebody just presenting the product, somebody talking a lot, etc. Right? If our basic understanding of extrovert and introvert is somebody who is very conversational and out there, and introvert, somebody who's keeping to himself, if this is our basic understanding, then technically it's not really necessary, right, that extroverts will make great sales executives and introverts will not. At least unless we don't have data to suggest that, we cannot come to this conclusion. And this is what analytics is about. Uh, it's about not necessarily using your gut, but using tools, numbers, data before making decisions. Now, just to what happened in the case, if you look at the data, it says that if in an interview, people go about making gut-based decision the way we all did, right? We see that there is 57% people who are hired. They are hired and they perform below par, right? 29% who are hired are average performers, and only 14% are somebody who matches the performance standards, criteria, and are above average performers. And we are seeing a 14% success rate on a gut-based interview decision, where we have gone about making a decision in first half a minute or first 1 minute of the interview, right? Now, if you look at HR professionals, and if you meet a lot of HR professionals, you would realize that a lot of people take pride in saying this. They say, when they're talking about their role, they say, I'm able to understand a profile so well in first half a minute of an interview that I'm able to make a decision. And this is something which is not really needed, because this leads to confirmation bias, because rest 90% of the interview or 95% of the interview, you're just trying to prove yourself right. Yeah. So when we talk about gut-based decision, I think it's not important to not make, not use gut. It's important that you use what you feel. It's important that what comes to your mind, what's your first reflex to a situation, to a person, is something that is taken into consideration. However, if you can back your gut, if you can back your feeling with data, nothing like it, right? So when we talk about human resource analytics, it's important for us to understand that it's not really necessary that that we use gut. And if we are using gut, if we are using what we feel, then it's very, very important that we back it up with data. We see patterns, we analyze profiles, we analyze people, we analyze situations, we analyze processes, and then we go about making a decision, right? So I just wanted to have a quick initiation into importance of data, because the way to go about is always look at it, right? And pull yourself back. So once a question like extrovert and introvert is thrown to you, I think it's important that you go back and say that, okay, are we selling it to, are we doing product sales on road, or are we doing insurance sales, or is it consultative sales, or is it something else? And also, I think what kind of mechanism then can help us find out whether the job fitment is better or not, because certainly there can be cases where if job's it's about patience, it's about listening, it's about creating an impression, then we really can't take a call of who would do it well. So looking at the job criteria, looking at what job wants to achieve, looking at the competencies and the skills needed in the entire role, I think we need to have a mechanism of testing it, and then only we can take a call of who would suit better, extrovert or introvert. And maybe zeroing down on 100 such roles and relating it to performance, we can probably draw a pattern that extroverts are performing 10% better than introverts, or introverts are performing 15% better than extroverts. But this is something that you would always want to have a look back at existing data, or have a view or a process that can get you that data, and then only make a decision. This is very, very important. This should be instinct of a HR analyst. This should be instinctive. The first thing that should come to your mind is not what should be the outcome. The first thing that you should come to your mind is, where is the data? What can be analyzed? What is the trend? And how can we reach an outcome? And this is really, really important, folks, right? Now, with this thought of why do we need to take a step back when a business problem or anything comes to us, let's understand the idea behind it. I think what is very important for us to understand is that what we are able to measure, we are able to manage. I think analytics, the philosophy behind analytics is that we would be able to manage something effectively if we are able to measure it. And if we are able to manage it better, then the way we want to execute it, that is something that can be achieved, right? And this is one of the toughest problems that businesses face in terms of measuring and managing and executing. And I think with good analytics, doing the homework right, it becomes possible for us to measure, manage, and execute. And that's the idea behind analytics. And that's even not only very specific to a business process. We as human beings, you may have friends who are really good with money management and time management, and they are able to accommodate much more of what lies in a day. And they are able to probably, go out, buy, at the same time save money. And then we have people who are not able to do that. And the idea is that, as I said, what is measured well, is managed well, and is executed well. So that's the philosophy, that's the idea behind HR analytics. Now, very, very important that we understand what is HR analytics. When we say HR analytics, what do we exactly mean, right? I think HR analytics there are two key steps to HR analytics, which are really important. I think the first step to HR analytics is identification, right? And systematic identification. So when we say HR analytics, it is systematic identification and quantification. The step two is quantifying, right? So once you have identified, you go about then quantifying and drawing a correlation between how people's strategies, how money that you're investing in talent, how is it leading to business outcomes? And this is what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to first identify, and second, quantify how people's strategies are driving business outcome, which is the best understanding of human resource analytics that we can create, right? Also, what it aims at achieving is that it promotes evidence-based HR, which technically means that we are making data-based decision. We are driving decision through data that can be read, and trust me, HRs are sitting on huge amount of data. The pile, it's piles and piles of data, right? And if we are sitting on so many data points, and we are working with so much of data in hand, I think we have enough to relate, correlate, and make decision based on evidences. And this is what analytics is all about. It is about making data-based decisions, and evidence-based HR practices is something that we are able to achieve by identifying and quantifying the data that we have and relating it to the people's strategies and how it is driving business outcomes. Now, with this understanding, I think one of the key elements that we need to differentiate is that analytics is not analysis, right? So we have to break analysis and analytics into two different parts, and our understanding for analysis has to be different from our understanding for analytics, which again is very important. So when we say analysis, I think analysis is the view is backwards. It's historical, it's empirical, right? So we are looking at analysis of what we are analyzing is what has already happened, right? And that is what analysis is about. Whereas analytics is about modeling the future, right? Or predicting a result, right? So analytics is not about looking behind. Analytics is about what will happen next, right? Analysis is about what will happen in future. Analysis is about what can be predicted, right? So analytics and analysis are related. However, approach is different, because what is analytics doing is that analytics is using the data that you have gone about analyzing, which means analytics is using analysis to understand the why so that it is able to predict the future, right? This is really important, yeah, because a lot of times if you look at there is a common saying, we go about saying history repeats itself, history repeats itself. Now if we look at this as a data point, and if we look at even human behavior, then human behavior has patterns, right? So what makes a human angry, what makes a human productive, what makes a human not productive, what makes a human learn previously is a good data point, because based on that you can take a call of what would be the likely behavior in future. So previous results and previous behavior is the best data that we have to predict what happens in the future. So analysis and analytics are both part of HR analytics, but it is about reading of what has happened in the past, what has happened historically, to be able to understand what would happen next. And this is what is a key difference that all of us in human resource vertical needs to have a view of and understanding of, right? Now, one of the key things that we also need to understand is when we talk about analytics, there is this whole idea of maturity model that comes into picture. And this understanding is really important because it structures the entire path, the entire journey that that we need to take in terms of understanding what HR analytics is all about. So one of the key elements that we need to have, understanding that we need to have about HR analytics is about the maturity model. Now, what does the maturity model say? Maturity model divides the entire HR analytics journey into 4 parts: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive, right? It divides the entire analytics journey into 4 parts: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And it's important for us to understand how this is structured, because most of what we would be doing in analytics is that we would follow this path. We would follow this path for analytics to happen well, right? So if we look at the analytics maturity model, it suggests that the first step, which is descriptive analysis or descriptive statistics, as a lot of experts say, it's about what has happened, right? You're looking at historically what has happened to be able to gauge things and have a better view of what's happening, right? Now, when we say what happened, why do we call it descriptive statistics? Now, this is very interesting because what happened can be really briefly also explained. But the idea of descriptive statistics is that you go about describing in detail, right, uh, of what has happened previously, what has impacted or created a business result, or probably not has created a business result, but whatever it is. So when you look at previous data, when you look at historical data, it's important that we go about describing things in detail. Now, this description can be qualitative, and this description can also be quantitative. The idea is that we should not miss on any data point. So when you say identification of data and quantification of data, I think one of the key elements of identifying is to be able to describe it well. And this is a very important step, because if one important data element or a data point is missed, then a lot of times analysis may not, or analytics that we do may not really help us, because we are missing on a key element on it, right? So descriptive statistics is about converting data or identifying data and making it quantifiable of what has already happened, right? Now, once you have this data with you, once you have the entire understanding of what has happened, I think it's important to get into the skin of thing in terms of why it happened, right? Why did it happen? So to be able to answer this is very, very important. And when we say the next step, which is diagnostic statistics, it is about figuring out, right? It's about getting a very important question answered of why it happened, right? Of why did it happen, what led to it, right? It can be anything. It can be retention, it can be attrition, it can be absenteeism, it can be offer decline, it can be anything, right? But to be able to first understand the entire data point and then read the data in a way to reason it out of why it happened is the next step in the analytics process, and that is called diagnostic analysis. We diagnose. It's just like, how you go to a doctor, and when you're not well, and when we go to a doctor, the first thing the doctor does is ask us a lot of questions. Do you have fever? How much has been the fever? Has there been shivering? Are you also coughing? Has there been runny nose? They go about asking a number of questions, and based on that, they take a call in terms of what might have happened. A lot of times they prescribe tests. So you do blood test or you do other tests, and that result really helps us now to zero down on the ailment. And that's when we are able to figure out of why it happened. And any medicine that can be given is through first understanding the problem and then also knowing why it happened, which means descriptive statistics and diagnostic statistics is the foundation of what would happen as the next two steps in human resource analytics, right? So once we have understood what has happened and also why it has happened, I think the next step is analytics, right? Next step is that when you're looking at the analysis data, when you're looking at quantifiable statistics of what happened and why it happened, now you can predict what will happen next. There have been a lot of iteration just after the appraisal process. Last year, there was increase in attrition rate by 15%. The normal salary hike that was given by the organization was in the range of 8 to 12%. Now, if a similar salary hike is being given this year, can you predict a similar result? Yes, you can predict a similar result, right? So when it comes to predictive analytics, it's about what will happen next, what's going to come, what can be the prediction, and what is the data that we have, what have we read, what have we understood, and based on that, to be able to gauge the future, to be able to suggest that this is the most likeliest of the choice that may happen or something that may occur, is predictive analytics. So now you get into the realm of of predicting what's going to happen next, right? And that's the next step, which is predictive analytics. And the last step to this is prescriptive analytics. It, it is the solution-based approach that we bring in now to HR analytics, where now we give solution of what should be done for it to not happen, or what should be done for a particular thing to happen. Now, if attrition rates are high, if attrition rates are and there is a connection between appraisal rates, and there is a connection between salary hikes, then you can go about suggesting that a following salary hike may lead to following outcome. However, if you want to arrest the attrition rate from, let's say, 15% to 12% or 11%, probably you can go about doing this to the salary structures, and then you can go about achieving this. So when we talk about prescribing, it is not about predicting what will happen. It's about what can be done to achieve something, right? To avoid something or to achieve something, as I said, right? So if you have business goals that needs to be achieved, and there are targets that as an organization, as a department, that you are chasing, then you can go about taking corrective steps, or you can go about enhancing experiences of people involved by gauging it and taking a better database decision and prescribing a solution. And this is where the consultative approach of HR comes into picture. And this is really important because this is game changing, right? This is game changing because now we as HR professionals are at a different level altogether. And probably I'll like to elaborate on this in future slides, but this is very, very important. Now, I've spent almost close to 8 to 10 minutes on this slide because this is the foundation of our understanding of HR analytics, right? Now, this is how traditional HR has been, right? Now, how it has been traditionally, if you look at, I think HR has had a lot of administrative focus, right? It has had a lot of administrative focus. We are talking about HR handling a lot of systems and a lot of processes and a lot of administrative activities. And we have really mastered the art of administration and the activities that we otherwise go about doing, right? We have also mastered execution and implementation. So if an X amount of work is given to HR department or HR professionals, I think we exactly know how to go about executing it, right? And that is something that has been the traditional view to human resource. It has also been about how we have front-led outsourcing effort of organizations, right? So how we have gone about outsourcing recruitment departments, even, making high cost center to low cost center by identifying locations, doing outsourcing or offshoring. And this is something that we have gone about achieving for the organization. And we have also driven to a great extent the automation, specifically for the support system, which is mainly human resource department or finance and accounts or admin, and where we have brought in automation to also reduce cost, right? So if you look at traditionally what has been, we have been able to achieve, and HR has had its own journey from the time it being called personal management in 1970s to the idea of human resource and the idea of task-based, skill-based, competency-based HR. We have come a long way. However, when we talk about how HR has been perceived so far, this is how the HR has been perceived. It has been perceived where there is a lot of focus on administration, on execution, implementation, on outsourcing, as well as on automation. And also still, I think uh, organization still has a consideration in terms of HR being considered as an overhead, right? Because end of the day, HR is cost to company, and it is not really driving revenues, driving profits, and it's a cost center, right? So it's still considered as a cost center, and this has been the traditional view of HR for very, very long, right? However, what evidence-based HR does, what HR analytics, the element that it brings in, what is the data-driven HR brings in, is that now it really takes a different shape altogether, right? We are talking about this giving us enough inputs and to look beyond cost, right? And savings and executing only. We are now looking about playing a planner's role, a strategic role, which is unique to company, and it also gives an organization a competitive advantage. Very important for us to understand, right? When we talk about being able to approach a business problem, right, and produce, identify and quantify data to read patterns of what has happened and what can happen and what should be done so that it does not happen, or what should be done that a particular thing happens that we want to achieve, or a target that we want to reach to, then we are not a department which is into reporting anymore. We are not into a department which is just about execution or support. We are into planning, we are into structuring, we are playing a strategic role, right? And this strategic role is not uh, generic strategic role. It is specific to the organization, because the business problem, the improvement area that we are looking at lies within the organization. It is within the organization that we are talking about. So the approach is absolutely customized. We are not necessarily looking, I mean, we may refer to data which is external to the organization in form of surveys, etc. But that's just a data point for us, right? We exactly know what's happening within our organization, and the solution that we would create would be unique to the company, which is very, very important, right? It is really, really important. And the moment you start not probably following what other organizations are doing which are successful, but maybe catering and creating best practices that are suiting your organization and your people, I think you have a competitive advantage, a definite competitive advantage, right? And that's why now evidence-based HR analytics, the element that we bring in, uh, it it helps us have a consultative approach. It helps us have a solutioning approach. It helps us provide solution to the real-time business problem improvement areas that an organization needs help on, input on. And this is the role that has changed by evolution of what we call as HR analytics. So it's a paradigm shift, which is at a completely different level. And that's why if you see in last few years, HRs, you have new verticals in HR. The whole structure of HR has changed. You have COEs, Circle of Excellences, which includes stuff like talent development, talent acquisition, also HR analytics. We are talking about designations like CHRO coming into picture. CHRO was not there 5 or 10 years back, right? You had CEO, you had CFO, now you have, and you had CEO, you had CTO, but now you did not have CHRO, but you have Chief Human Resource Officer. We are in the C league. It was never the case before. And this has only been able to because HR has moved from playing a traditional role, which we have already mastered and we have really improved on, to a strategic role where we are giving inputs which are specific to the organization, unique to the organization, and it's giving them competitive advantage. And it's, as I said, is a huge shift from the regular way of doing things, right? Now Now everybody, am I clear so far? Is it clear? What we have discussed is that we have we started by first having a view of that we really need not look at, feel, and what we feel is right. We always take a step back and then look at the data points, and then only we go about taking a decision. We moved into understanding what HR analytics is by defining it as being able to identify and quantify, and being able to really make data important in our decision making. And then we talked about difference between analysis and analytics, and then we spent good amount of time to understand the maturity model for HR analytics, and also related to the traditional way of doing things and the analytics way of doing things. Everybody is clear so far? Right. As I said, I would be taking all the questions towards the end of the webinar. And everybody is getting what I'm saying. Everybody is understanding with me, able to see me, my screen, etc. Okay, wonderful. Now with this, let's move ahead with the next level of understanding that we need to create. And the next level of understanding that we need to create is that what are we providing, and how are we providing to the organization this strategic input, right? We have to provide this input, isn't it? We have data, we have gone about describing it, analyzing it. We have gone about predicting and prescribing as well. But whom are we prescribing? What are we predicting? For whom we are predicting, right? So now there are internal stakeholders within the organization who needs help in better decision making, right? So we need to have help them have better vision, right? They should be able to see the future. They should be able to predict the future. And it would happen at two levels. One is for the management and executives. When I say executives, I don't mean executive in terms of CEOs, in terms of the board of directors, in terms of the management team, in terms of the top management. That is one level of this data decision that we can help them with. And the second level of is the managers that are in the organization, the first level of manager, the second level of manager, the junior manager folks, or the senior, or the middle level manager folks. And we would be able to help them with data that can help them take better decisions, right? So when it comes to vision for executives, I think one of the key elements that they want to see is how has the current investment in talent, in people, led to meeting of business objectives. That is the first level of thing that they want to see. The second aspect is how would my future investments, right? How would my future people investments lead to business objectives? And that is also very, very important, right? So when we talk about vision for executives, I think in our presentations, in our the way we collect data, the way we present data to them, the dashboards that gets created, the storytelling that gets built along with the dashboard is about people investment versus business objective. And this is the data that they are really interested in. The key elements, the overview, the strategic inputs that they require in terms of people or talent investments, helping them to achieve business objectives. Now, this may change when you are catering to managers or the leaders within the organization, right? This may change when we are talking about people who are first-time managers, or who are junior management or middle management, right? What they need is they need decision support, they need action alerts, and they need inputs on how to create optimized teams. Now, let me just elaborate in 2 minutes on this. I think a lot of times it's important that they are able to make better decisions based on the input that we have. Now, when we are looking at a set of people and we have data related to internal customers, external customers, related to performance, related to talent acquisition, related to talent development or training and development, related to specific business problems, related to skills versus goal achievement. Now we have this input with us, right? We should be able to equip and empower the manager with the decision the person needs to make in terms of all these aspects, whether it's training related data, whether it is performance related data, whether it's transfer related data, whether it's promotion related data, whether it's upskilling related data, whether it's data specific to customer input and customer interaction and its impact on business. We should be able to provide with the data that we have input to managers so that they are able to make better decisions in aspects like this, because this is what matters to them, right? They are working as in frontline in terms of interacting with customers, interacting with internal stakeholders, interacting with and meeting business deliverables. So they need decision support in terms of that. They also need action alerts. I think that's very important. They need action alerts in terms of attrition patterns and employee turnover data. They need prediction stuff in terms of employee happiness index. They need leadership satisfaction quotient that can be probably met, right? Just to give you an example, I think one of the organizations, what it did was that it was gauging the body language of employees working with them, and looking at the body language of how a person was working. They were deriving pattern in terms of who would quit when, who looks engaged, who doesn't look engaged, who looks disengaged, who looks really unhappy. So they started predicting the pattern. Now, if you have a pattern or a data on this, I think it really becomes easy for you to alert somebody so that you can take preventive measures rather than curative measures, right? So it's really, really important. It's just like, how probably when season changes, it's important that, you go about intaking food that really helps you build immunity so that you're able to deal with that. The same way you can give intelligent action alerts to line managers, to frontline managers, to people at leadership positions, to be able to take better decisions. And also it's about, having fit teams, optimized teams with good workload levels, so that you create a culture of you create a culture of deliverables being met, to be able to culture of competence. A lot of times managers do not have, there is a whole feeling of managers of leading bigger teams, leading fatter teams rather than fitter teams. And I think one of the very good input that you can go about giving managers, what would be an optimized team size to be able to meet the deliverables that are there in the quantified time or in the specific time that it needs to be delivered. So your approach now changes. The kind of data that you would now produce, the create, suggest, implement, present for executives would be different, because that would focus more in terms of talent investment and people investment. And the moment you move to the managers within the organization, the structure of the data, the presentation of that data, all that is something that needs a different approach altogether, right? Now, how do we then go about suggesting this, right? So as of now, till now, whatever I have discussed is very, very conceptual in terms of our understanding of HR analytics, isn't it, right? But end of it, it should reflect, it should be broken down into the kind of work that we would be doing, isn't it? How would we be identifying data? How would we be pulling in data? How would we be structuring data? How would we be representing data? All these are very important questions in terms of, because this is what would help us get work done, right? So when we talk about analytics model, when you talk about describing, when we talk about identifying, when we talk about quantifying, I think one of the key elements that comes into picture is metrics, right? The formulas that we need to track, and where do we need to track, right? So basically, this is where you need to track metrics. You need to track metrics specific to recruitment and selection or talent acquisition. You need to track metrics in L&D, learning and development or training, or talent development, in retention, in compensation and benefits, in workforce planning, in performance management, and in career management. Now, this is where you need to track the matrix, right? Now, when we talk about matrix, it's important to understand what it does, right? Because if you have, let's say, an enormous amount of data, you apply the matrix on it and you get input out that then helps you quantify the data in a way where reading it can help you gauge a pattern, which now then can at a later stage be predicted, right? So the one of these are the drivers. Metrics are the drivers to HR analytics, because if metrics are not there, then how would you do that? I mean, how would you quantify? How would you read data? How would you predict, right? So really, really important. These are the areas under which we need to go about tracking metrics. So let me give you a few examples of what metric tracking looks like, right? For example, simple metrics like revenue per employee or cost per hire. If you look at revenue per employee, it is nothing but total revenue by total number of employees, and this gives you revenue per employee. When we talk about cost per hire, it is about all recruiting and HR staffing cost divided by number of new hires. All right, all recruitment costs, which could include going to campuses, it can be included the employee referral cost, placement consultant cost, it can be about ads on various job sites or newspaper or other medias. It can be all cost put together divided by number of new hires is the cost per hire for recruitment. Similarly, getting to the next level or slight little more complex calculations, you have overtime percentage, where we are talking about total payroll, where all the money that you're paying in salary versus money that you're paying as overtime, right? So that is what overtime percentage means. So we are talking about overtime pay amount divided by total payroll. When you talk now, this is very important for a manufacturing unit, because in manufacturing unit, or overtime is a concept that really decides on you making better decisions. For example, uh, if you are part of a manufacturing unit and you want to advise managers, should they have more people or more full-time staff, or they should be able to manage it by giving existing employees overtime. And normally overtime is more costly, because people, if they're working overtime, they get 1.5 times or 2 times the hourly pay. So if you're talking about that, then what would be more beneficial? This is a very important input. Is it seasonal overtime, or it's year long? And if some if mapping can be done and some kind of data can be suggested, then for a manufacturing unit, it's so much beneficial, because they would have such better data to make decisions. Similarly, when we talk about billable hours, for a services company, for an IT setup, for a training setup, where their entire earning depends on the amount of billable hours that they have with the client, I think this is how you go about calculating billable hours. Now, this can be per employee, per team, per unit, for the entire organization. So it is billable hours divided by total hours worked. Now, some more metrics, if you look at going little higher on the complexity, not really difficult, because the idea is that we as HR professionals should not get scared of metrics, because a lot of times decision of getting into HR is because not really being good with numbers or mathematics or concepts. But let's understand that HR analytics is not complex. We are not getting calculus into it. We are not getting uh, 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 differentiation, integration into it. We are talking about basic arithmetic, right? So it's not really complex. It's really easy, and it's very, very process oriented. So if our understanding of process, if our understanding of departments are good, then it becomes a cakewalk for any HR professional, right? Time to productivity for a new hire, if we are calculating, then date of new hire when he hits the target minus the new hire start date is time to productivity. A good performance or above average performance is number of employees rated above average divided by all employees, right? When we talk about cost of HR, cost of HR per employee can be total HR salary and benefits divided by number of employees. When we talk about job satisfaction rate, it is about number of people who are satisfied with job divided by total number of employees. right? When it comes to healthcare cost, it is about total healthcare cost divided by number of employees signed up for healthcare. Anything and everything can be tracked. Now look at this. The next formula is so interesting. It talks about job alignment. Now, how would you measure the job alignment, right? Now, job alignment might have a direct impact on employee experience and employee happiness when a person is working in an organization. Job alignment is nothing but number of goals aligned divided by all work activities and goals that the person has to accomplish. So this happens with almost all jobs, right? For example, we might have a particular designation, and that may reflect upon what our core things are, but we are doing a lot of additional things for our organization or as part of the job. But what are the core activities which are aligned to our job, aligned to organization effectiveness? If that gets measured or tracked, that gives us very good data, because just by increasing that as well, we may improve employee experience and impact attrition or impact other aspects which may be causing dissatisfaction, right? Very, very important that we are able to, track these things. Another very important data that you need to calculate is net promoter score. Now, earlier, net promoter score was mainly done to customers. Now, what is net promoter score? Now, when do you become a promoter? When do you promote something? Is only when you're really happy, right? So when they say that, let's say in a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, we are talking about who would promote your business, right? So for example, you go and watch a movie, you only recommend that movie for others to watch if you're really connected with that, isn't it? Which means it's 9 or 10. If you only suggest a restaurant when you really find it, the service good, the food good, the ambience good, or altogether everything good, right? So when we say that net promoter score, it is about in a scale of 0 to 10, 9 and 10 being promoters, right? And 7 and 8 being passives. Passives means they are not actively promoting. They are saying that, okay, I like it, it's fine, it's okay, but they are not actively there. They may get engaged only when they are asked for. And anything below 6 for an NPS score is considered to be a detractor, where you really don't say good things about your experience or what you have gone through, right? So when we talk about NPS, I think NPS also is an important parameter today for employee happiness, employee experience within an organization, where whether you would want an employee to be a promoter, somebody who's passive, or a detractor, right? This is done by organizations which have number of branches, number of locations, and they track it, and then they go about catering to employee, relating this data with employee surveys to be able to come up with better understanding of what can be done to have decide on their engagement strategies, or have better output in terms of employee satisfaction, right? So these are some very, very interesting. So if you look at all that we discussed in terms of revenue per employee, cost per employee, overtime, billable, time to productivity, good performance, cost of HR, job satisfaction, healthcare cost, job alignment, NPS, these are all metrics. And I mean, these are random metrics, but if you want to relate something to recruitment, then you may have to pick metrics, or you have to create metrics, or you have to, if it's about employee engagement or learning, or if it's about workforce analytics, or if it's about organizational effectiveness, or it's about L&D, you can have, I mean, this is just like maybe 1% of all, not even 1% of all metrics that you would normally see in an organization, or you would need in HR analytics to be able to analyze things better, quantify things better, and apply this on what you have identified to be able to derive meaning. And a lot of times it's not that you would get these formulas, right, written. A lot of times even existing formulas may not really get applied. So it's not as simple as, knowing the formula for A plus B whole square as A square plus B square plus 2AB and just applying it wherever you want. A lot of times HR processes are very unique to company, as I said earlier, right? So you may either have to apply what exists, or you may have to create a new formula, right, to get it getting applied in an organization. So for example, if we talk about creating metrics that matter, right? If we talk about thinking of situations of what would a formula look like if we need, let's say NPS was for employee support, right? Or employee engagement, right? So if we look at, let's say, how will we calculate or create a matrix where we are talking about employee engagements component into performance, right? Now, let's say we have to calculate that, right? So there is performance, and we are looking at having in that performance, what is the impact of, or what is the contribution of employee engagement. Now, if this is something that you're looking at measuring, then you have to create a new matrix. Probably this matrix never existed, or you probably would not find it otherwise, right? So if that is something that we have to see, then we have to probably define performance or create a formula for performance where there is a component of employee relation or employee engagement, right? So for example, if you look at this formula where performance is defined as ability into support into motivation, we are seeing that what is leading to performance? What is leading to performance is that if an able person who is supported well and is motivated enough, then you can expect good performance, optimum performance from that individual, right? Ability into support into motivation, right? So when you look at the employee engagement component of this in the formula, then probably support and motivation are the employee engagement component. Ability is a performance management component, or a L&D component, or let's say a TA component, which can then help us make decisions better. Are you getting it? Right? So when we talk about human resource analytics, and when we talk about the entire model and entire structure, and when it finally zeroes down on using metrics on data to make it more meaningful and make it more identifiable or make it more quantifiable, then a lot of times you will have formulas which you can directly apply, but a lot of times you may also have to create formulas which would make a lot of sense. Now, just to take another formula, what would be the formula for innovation, right? If we talk about what is the formula for innovation for, let's say, a product company, what is innovation? Innovation is nothing but number of successful trials or successful ideas or suggestions that we are giving versus total number of suggestions, right? So this is innovation. This is the formula for innovation, right? What is it? It is number of successful product or product ideas divided by total number of suggestions. Now you're measuring innovation, you're measuring creativity, you're measuring performance by creating formulas. Very interesting, right? It's a world where we are having existing metrics, we are applying, identifying, quantifying, predicting, prescribing, and also there is this whole effort that we now put in terms of creating matrix, sensing it of what exists, how it exists, what is there, what is our element. If we have to create a formula around it, what would it look like, map it, and then now apply it on the existing data to be able to identify, quantify, understand, predict, prescribe well, right? So that brings a completely different experience for HR analysts, because now they are dealing with new challenges and new way of looking at things, and bring in a lot of element of lot of interesting elements in the way they go about doing things, right? Now with this understanding, I think let's move to understanding impact of HR analytics, and we will discuss a very interesting case, right? Very interesting case where we would be talking about how HR analytics can actually solve a business problem, right? So when we talk about, let's say, a case here where we are talking about high absenteeism rate in ABC Corporation, and it leading to loss in productivity, right? So what was happening? The absenteeism rate was high in an organization, and this was leading to loss in productivity, loss of business, right? Absenteeism rate was 7.2% compared to acceptable limit of 2.5%. Now, this is the business problem that was confronted by HR analyst, right? There was high absenteeism rate and there was loss of productivity, and this was primarily happening because absenteeism rates were almost more than double, slightly more than double, which was acceptable limit was about 2.5 to 3.5%. However, absenteeism rate was about 7.2%, right? Now, if this is the problem that is given to an HR analyst, he would go about first creating matrix in terms of calculating absenteeism, also figuring out the reason for absenteeism, and then probably looking at solving the problem. So for example, if you look at the matrix for absenteeism, it is nothing but total absent days divided by total number of work days worked by workforce into 100, right? Now, this is the formula for absenteeism. Now, once you use this formula, you apply this formula, you find out the reason, you do a lot of analysis that you go about doing, you get inputs, you get metrics getting applied, you read the data, you understand the data, you get into the skin of things, and that's when you find out the reasons. And when this was done, the reasons that was found out was these, right? The reasons for absenteeism is about 40% people are being absent because of personal illness, 21% because of family issues, 20% for personal needs, 14% for entitlement mentality, 5% for stress, right? Now, if the moment you have reasons for absenteeism clear, I think now you are in a better position to suggest a solution. Now, how would you suggest a solution? If 40% reason for absenteeism is personal illness, then you would want organization to do something so that the reason for absenteeism by people falling ill is reduced. So you may come up with preventive or curative measures, like maybe doctor on campus, you can have health weeks, you can have yoga on campus, you can have a balanced diet month, you can have agronomic work settings, you can have predicting seasons and suggesting through mails, through changes, or just through better communication in terms of what needs to change in their food habits or otherwise living habits as seasons are changing. So, and you can go about doing this, right? You can go about probably coming up with solutions which can help you reduce absenteeism because of personal illness. Similarly, when it comes to family issues, you may need a daycare for women employees. You may need tie up with schools, colleges, universities for people in certain seasons. You may need counselors on campus. There can be a lot of reasons, a lot of family reasons why you may include that. If once you understand that, right, you are able to suggest a solution. Similarly, for personal needs, you can take for entitlement mentality, you can go about probably changing policy. Some organizations have policy of I mean, what is entitlement mentality? Entitlement mentality is I'm entitled to, let's say, sick leave or casual leave. No matter whether I'm sick or I'm not sick, I'll still take those leaves, right? And this is what entitlement mentality is. But the leave is given to you because there is a particular reason. So if you look at organizations, they come up with change in strategy. Now, once you have clear idea of what the productivity levels are, what is the business loss, or what is the revenue loss, or you can take a much better call. You can come up with, like one organization, what it does was that you had earned leaves, right? So it changed all the earned leaves, all the sick leaves, all the casual leaves into earned leaves or privilege leave, right? So earned leave is when you don't take that leave, you get money. The moment you make sick leave and earned leave, sick leave and casual leave, earned leave, the reason for taking that leave is gone there, and that reduces entitlement mentality. Similarly, you can talk about policy change in terms of bringing in more of stick element in terms of your policy, where people get penalized if the leaves are there. You can go about taking approach, but you have to have back this up, not generally, but with data of what would work and what would not work. Similarly, stress, you can have work-life balance, you can have flexible policies, you can bring in elements where now absenteeism gets reduced, right? Now, this is what the organization did. What organization did was that they already had a lot of employee engagement budget and a lot of activities they were doing. They started prioritizing and giving and allotting more budgets to existing initiatives which were there and which was the reason for absenteeism. They didn't only do that, they also took new employee engagement initiatives which were directly addressing the reasons for absenteeism. So either there were existing initiatives or there were new initiatives. The budgets for existing initiatives or the way you drove existing initiatives, that changed, and new initiatives were also undertaken, which were catering to reasons for absenteeisms. And then absenteeism was from 7.2%, it was reduced to 3.8%, almost half. It got reduced to 3.8% in 1 year. And this is how better analytics went about solving a business problem. Now, this problem is also, I mean, this is something that a lot of HR business partners also face. So a lot of times when I talk to HR business partners, I bring in the same case element and I discuss it with them, because it's very, very meaningful, because a lot of times there is a gradual route that HR business partners take to getting into analysts, though HR analyst is such a good, interesting field that people from any vertical today with the knowledge of HR analytics are able to shape up their career to the next level, right? In fact, even freshers are able to do that. Experienced folks are also able to do that with better understanding of what different processes are. This is something that they are able to do it because the requirement versus what is available, there is a huge gap. There is a huge gap between the need of people who understand HR and equipped with HR processes and understanding and has knowledge of analytics and analysis processes and how exactly it works, right? This combination is very, very rare, and this is something that's going to redefine how HR professional choose career options for at least the next 1 decade, right? Now, what is also very important for us is to understand the approach that HR analysts should take, right? Now, you cannot just generally take any approach and go about aiming at, bringing in data or collecting data. There is a reason of why you are doing it. And this understanding this approach is really important. So this is how you go about approaching driving HR analytics within an organization or approaching something, right? So first thing that you do is that you identify a business problem or an improvement area, either, right? Either you identify a business problem or a improvement area. Second, what you do is that you identify data points. That is very, very important. You identify data points. Third is that you develop a culture of collecting data. You have to, by empowering line manager, by making sure that existing data is structured well, collected well, and at the same time, missing data or data that can be useful, which is not being collected, we go about we have a mechanism to collect that as well, and we don't miss on that, right? So you start with a business problem, you identify the data points, you develop a culture of collecting data, you empower line managers to do it, because they are the foot soldiers, because that is where you will get the data from, right? You cannot physically be omnipresent and be collecting data anywhere and everywhere. So you need channels and mechanism where this is happening on its own, and you have to empower line managers to be able to do it. And then you go about running analysis and analytics, and then you go about suggesting managers with actionable business information, right? Now, this is what put the entire presentation that we have done today in perspective. Very, very important slide. It is as important slide as the analytics maturity model. What are we doing? We are starting with the business problem or improvement area. We are identifying the data points. We are using metrics on the identified data points to be able to collect measurable, quantifiable information. We are doing this by developing a culture of collecting data, by also identifying the data that we have and data that is missing. We have to have foot soldiers. We have to have line managers who help us collect this data. So we have to communicate effectively, empower line managers to be able to do it. And once we have this entire data, we go about running analysis. And with analysis, we then come to analytics, where we go about predicting or prescribing based on what business information they may need, whether it's the management or the executives or the line managers. Either way, we have to go about giving them good, intelligent, actionable business information to be able to take decision, Very, very important in terms of the whole process of implementing the maturity model on ground is this graph, right? Now, what are we needed? Let's talk about future of analytics, or the present of analytics, of what we are looking at accomplishing. Very important again. I think this is what, so when you talk about job description, when you talk about explaining something, the best way of explaining it is by writing it in a way of what should be the end result. And this is what HR analytics should accomplish for businesses. This should be the end result of intelligent analytics. They should be able to make better hiring decisions by predicting candidate success, prevent talent from quitting their job by predicting employee turnover, test which employee policies are effective and which are not, very important again, identify and quantify work accident risk, analyze future workforce need, improve and optimize the employee experience. Better talent development strategy is something that we need to develop. ROI calculation on talent development initiative has to be perfected. Tackling talent scarcity is something that HR analytics should be able to accomplish. Process improvement and enhancement is something that would be driven by analytics. Employee productivity would be improved by using HR analytics. Optimizing organization structure, optimizing headcounts is something that we would look at by achieving, driving HR analytics. Improve company profitability per employee, better compensation and rewards decision, and linking HR actions to business outcome is all that we would be the key elements of what HR analysts would do in times to come. I think our action is directly impacting organizations' profitability. This is, as I said, it's a complete different shift. It's a paradigm shift from the traditional role that we were playing as HR professionals and what we would be doing as HR analytics professional is these outcomes. And this makes or brings us to a very, very special place within the organization where the kind of salaries that we would command, the kind of strategic role that we will have is very, very interesting. And I think these are some of the key elements that all of us should know as HR analysts. Very, very important. If we are talking about workload analysis, we should know what workload analysis, how exactly it's done, how it gets implemented. Resource planning, competency drivers and metrics is something how it gets created, gets linked and gets implemented, how pay parity tools are created, analyzed, implemented, how KPIs, the new age KPIs, not the regular KRA KPI, KPIs, new age KPI, which is not necessarily fitting into bell curve, but playing a larger role in terms of even getting implemented in continuous feedback method, how exactly that is taking shape. The RTCA, the role task competency analysis, how exactly that's being done, learning effectiveness, employee engagement. These are all areas that would get impacted by HR analytics. And we as HR professionals, we need to know all of it to be able to drive organization success, which is very, very important. Now, remember, this is the data that we have in terms of analytics versus outcome. I think for every $1 spent on analytics, the return is mind-boggling $13, right? For every $1 that you spend, every 1 rupee that you spend, every 1 dirham that you spend, every 1 pound, every 1 euro that you go about spending, the return is 13 times, right? This is huge. So if you look at the focus that organizations will have, and not only organizations, when I say a Fortune 500 organization and top end organization, I'm talking about any organization which is looking, which is serious about work, which is serious about business, is gonna redefine its processes, its systems, its people strategy, its support strategy, its employee life cycle, its employee experience in times to come, because the output is just too huge versus the cost. The output is much too huge versus the cost. So we foresee that HR analysts would be one of the best paid HR professionals in the industry, and they would be playing a much more powerful role, much more strategic role in organizations in times to come. And as I said, that as there is scarcity, there is not enough number of people who just like probably 20 years back, there were not enough software engineers that who could program. The same way you do not have enough HR analysts who know the entire cycle, who know in and out of it, who can understand and relate to HR processes versus analytics. I think this is a huge opportunity for HR professionals. And if they are able to make use of it, I think for the way they define their career for next 5 to 10 to 15 years, I think it would be really interesting to see that journey, and that journey would be at a completely different level. Now, with this thought, I think I would just take about 3 minutes to introduce you to the certification in HR analytics, and then I would open up the floor for all questions, all thoughts, all doubts, all clarifications that you may need. I think we have a certification in human resource analytics. This is brought to you by CHRMP, which is Certified Human Resource Management Professional. I'm one of the chief facilitators for that. I would be conducting a number of sessions. Now, this is like a certification journey where we give you pre-reads and we conduct the workshop online, and then we reinforce the concepts that you have learned, and we also validate you with a global certification, right? Now, when you look at what you would be getting pre-reads. It would have MCQs. You would read it. Those reads would be discussed. In fact, everybody would get a lot of data, a lot of material to go through to build those competencies. I think workshop would cover everything that is of importance to us. I think all that we were talking about, right from understanding terminologies and analytics to getting into detail, to understanding what is trend analysis, what is semantic analysis, to understanding what is impact of AI and ML in HR, to understanding how pay parity is done, how RTCA is done, how workload analysis is done, how talent development analytics is done, how Kirkpatrick L1, L2, L3, L4 gets implemented on ground, to how compensation restructuring, reward recognition policy is designed, implementing analytics, and how manpower optimization is done using analytics, how process optimization within organization is done using analytics. All this is something that would be taught to you, not only in terms of concept, but in terms of case, in terms of discussion, in terms of breakout rooms. So people would be broken down into breakout room. A case will be given. They will just discuss how it happens in the classroom. They would come up with solutions. A solution structure would be given to them, and they will come back to the classroom. We will be talking about that. So it would be broken down into concept discussion, and then post concept discussion there would be an ICP, which is in class project, that would be given, or a case that would be given, and they would be doing that, and then there would be discussion and outcomes. So the kind of exposure is really good. There would be reinforcement and effectiveness of how you implement it in your current roles or otherwise. The learning that has happened in terms of doing that. And the best part is validation. I think what makes CHRMP truly global is the certification partner. Pearson View is the same certification partner for likes of Six Sigma, Project Management Institute, etc. So if we are talking about the best or the biggest certification partner in the world, CHRMP certification partner is Pearson View. 190 countries, 5,600 test centers speaks volumes to what CHRMP certification in HR analytics brings as a credential to you. You're also given a digital certificate along with it, which can be mapped to LinkedIn, and a lot of analytics openings are being tracked, applied through, and mapped through by organizations through LinkedIn. And also, I think as times are slightly uncertain, I think it's time that we go about investing in self, because what would prepare us better for any eventuality that may happen in times to come is how future ready we are. And a lot of people, and also have the first mover benefit, because a lot of people would realize it in times to come, and they would go about investing in self, because that would be the way forward if there is any economic downturn in the times that we are in currently. So I think that is very important. This is the structure that is taught to you. You learn maturity model is just a small part that we did. There are other models as well, and that also needs more detailed understanding. You learn workload analysis, compensation analysis, talent development analytics, data gathering management, HR analytics, KPI metrics, and then you learn storytelling and dashboarding using this beautiful tool called Tableau. This entire thing is something that you would take away, and I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, I personally, lockdown has really been interesting for me because I've spent a lot of times upskilling and learning new things that would make me more relevant. But I would recommend all of you to really think that, if this is something that is possible, that you can invest time in learning. I think we are looking at starting a batch on 27th of April, and as part of lockdown series, as part of lockdown learning, this will go on for 5 days from